I am excited to welcome our next panelists who will be exploring next generation test prep, where we will confront the future of educational preparation. So Saurabh Sanghvi from McKinsey will be moderating a discussion on how technology is revolutionizing test preparation.
Okay, welcome everyone. We are at that fun time of the day where people are probably needing some chai, and so we're gonna liven things up and talk about the next generation of everyone's favorite topic, test prep. Hopefully that's causing a little bit of PTSD, but after you hear this panel, I'm sure you're gonna feel a lot better about the next generation of what we're thinking about. So to frame the conversation, when I was thinking about the next generation of test prep, I think we're at a very interesting time where first, if we think about the digital revolution, we now have data and AI and can be thinking about adaptive systems in a very new way. Additionally, we're starting to think about augmented reality and virtual reality. And so this aspect of maybe thinking about assessments in a new way, thinking about experiential assessments and things like that are becoming more a reality. And so one phenomena that we want to talk about is what's the impact of the digital revolution on the way that we think about assessments and test prep. Second, there's been a lot of discussion around the blend of teaching and learning and assessments. And so another area that we're gonna spend a lot of time as a panel thinking about is how do we really think about holistic development? And how do we think about not only preparing someone to be successful at taking a test, but actually really preparing someone to be successful and having a really prosperous career. And then thirdly, if we add a lot of other things that we're talking about in this conference, there's this notion of the future of work. And as we think about preparing the next generation of Indian students and global students for what's coming next, how do we think about what are those skills that are important? And then therefore, what should we be doing in terms of our assessments? What should we be doing in terms of our test prep? And how do we think not only about really important numeracy and literacy skills, but also things such as critical thinking, social and emotional learning, and a lot of those aspects. And so we've got 28 minutes, so we'll get to the tip of the iceberg on some of those topics. But joining me to explore that, we've got a wonderful group of panelists who are thinking about this from a long legacy of doing this for quite a bit of time. So let me start with the first theme of digitization. And Amey, let me start with you.
Okay.
And so, from your vantage point of both being an instructor and someone that's done a lot of research in terms of building a tutoring solution and now building a solution that's going to help people prepare for exams, what's your vantage point in terms of what the future of assessments and the future of test prep is looking like?
Right. So if you look at the assessment, so first question is why do we need assessments, right? So till now, one of the reasons, at least at higher education, we need assessment is because students are competitive. They want some kind of ranking at every stage. And in some sense, we are trying to help them get a good job, means help companies to identify the talent, right? However, the original idea behind assessment is to measure learning of the students. Are they able to learn? Okay, it's kind of feedback to the teacher, whether teacher is able to convey the knowledge or not, and are students able to grasp it. But with the growing class sizes, and especially with online classrooms, the assessment is kind of changing in a very different way. And that is where this digital or automated assessment is coming into picture, okay? And other place where we are using assessments is for these competitive exams to decide who gets which college and so on. And as we can see that in India at least, the numbers are so huge these days that only way we are able to assess is by using some multiple choice questions. So we are creating variations on those by creating a multiple select where you have more than one answers can be correct, or fill in the blanks, or putting some numbers. But all these are still not evaluating students' thinking capability. They are more they are more catching whether a student is able to crack a problem or not, is he able to arrive at the solution or not. But this path is not clear to us. Did he take the right path or not, right? So I think with growing AI and then AI becoming more powerful, some of the things that we can do now, and it has already started, is look at subjective answers from the students and evaluate whether the individual steps themselves are correct or not. Okay, so this is where I feel we are going. That and other thing is that we can also give feedback, and this feedback can also be at different levels. We can give individual step feedbacks, or maybe at the end of the test. So this feedback, it can be provided almost instantaneously, which is becoming more and more difficult in large classes. So I feel digitization or AI, it will take us towards that direction, where we can now once again look at the thinking process of a student rather than just whether he is able to get to the answer somehow or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Amey. Sushma, maybe let me go to you next. You've been doing this, and your institution has been doing this for now multiple decades. And so let me ask you a sort of different flavor of the question. As we think about the next generation of test prep and some of the things that we were just mentioning, what stuff do you think we need to embrace, but also what stuff that I may call old gen test prep do you think still needs to be continued as we think about the future?
I've been, Sri Chaitanya has been around for 39 years now, and we've been doing this every single year. And I've been in this industry for 17 years. And in these 17 years, I've seen a huge transition in test prep, actually. I think IIT JEE Advanced moved from subjective to objective because of the number of students. And then now we have a mains exam, a NEET exam, which is an all India medical exam. So a lot of changes have happened. And students have, the positive sign is students have started thinking about national level exams rather than state level exam, because that gives them opportunity into better universities across the country. But when it comes to the exam methodology, I think the fundamental basis for conducting different tests is different. Because JEE Advanced tries to test the student in higher order thinking. And mostly the students, at least in Sri Chaitanya, we see the best of students get into it. Because these students are being trained for Olympiads and different kind of thought-provoking questions and exams. So we see a lot of consistency in their result along with their preparation. When a student does a lot of assertive reasoning questions, assertion reasoning, multiple matching, there are more than one answers, there are multiple formats, and the format changes every year, which really tests the student and challenges the student to assess the subject, application skills, problem solving within that given time. It's not easy at all. I'm sure there are a lot of teachers who will not be able to do that paper in the 3 hours that our students do. But when it comes to mains and NEET, which NTA conducts now, again, that basis is very different. Those papers are not as thought-provoking as JEE Advanced are. I see a need to revamp those, because if you look at it, India is a very competitive country. And our parents are focused on education. That is a primary goal for any parent, right? To get the best of education for their children. And 26 million of Indian kids are in schools now at this moment. 26 million, out of which 80% are in rural India. So how do we train? How do we train those 80% of students who are in rural India, other than the urban students? It's not an easy challenge. 20 lakh students take NEET exam every year. So to filter 1 lakh medical seats, students eligible for 1 lakh medical seats out of the 20 lakh students that take the exam, that's insane, right? The amount of precision, accuracy, speed that the student needs to develop along with learning the subject. So that is what test prep is today, because of the supply and demand problem actually. I wish it was otherwise, and we need to, as a country, work on building more institutions for higher education to give more opportunities to our children. Coming back to test prep, I think the more we look for problem-solving abilities in children, the better they will be trained throughout their school process. So rote learning can be discarded. So, by now, a lot of it is discarded. Especially students who are successful in these competitive exams, they don't come through rote learning. They come through analytical abilities, learning the subject, and fundamentally understanding how to solve problems within that given time. That is a great change I have seen. I mean, brilliant kids. You know, our country has brilliant children who can learn the subject and apply, which sometimes even the teachers are unable to solve. So we are progressing. I'm sure we can find much better ways of doing so. You know, one thing I've been thinking is right now, you know, till 12th grade, there is a path. And then the student either goes to an IIT or an NIT or IIIT or a medical school. And then the progress is cut off. There's no way to track how they are doing. So the minute we start tracking the educational career of any child, I think through the generative AI techniques, we can come up with so many new methodologies. How to train a student from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grades, how to standardize education across schools, right? That is the most important part. We as Sri Chaitanya have been doing our role. Now Infinity Learn as our EdTech partner have been doing it, but 80% in rural India. Please imagine how hard it is for those children to fight with these other kids who are better equipped. So that standardization of methodologies can come only through artificial intelligence, I feel. You cannot train person to person as you go on. If those tools are available to those kids, I think part of the problem at least will solve.
Interesting. And I want to come back to this, how do we reach all of those students in a second. But Abha, before I do that, your mandate in your new role is to really think about the digital part of Allen. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question around what do you see as the next generation of test prep and assessments as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So I actually think Sushma touched on many of the points around why our exams are the way they are, right? There is immense amount of competition, and it's ultimately supply and demand in terms of how competitive the test prep space is. Like if you look at, but if I peel that away, right? If you just look at what is a IIT JEE exam trying to solve for, they're preparing, they're selecting the best problem solvers. That's what you need in engineering. So in many ways, I think the exam achieves that, right? As Sushma also touched on it, you cannot clear that exam through rote learning. This is what we see also at Allen, that the most analytical thinkers, in fact, it's such a complex exam, you as a problem solver, you have to not just know a single concept, you have to be able to apply multiple concepts to a problem, which is I think in many ways starting to get closer to what real world problem solving is, right? So in that sense, I actually think, given sort of the dynamics of the country and the need of the country, I do think the test prep exams are serving for that and doing a good job there. I think similarly, if you look at NEET, right, you will see that while the exam patterns become simpler, they're starting to throw in more practical questions in the NEET exam. Now, I think as a platform, in my case, and as an institute, we think a lot about how do we actually prepare students so that they are actually becoming analytical thinkers. They're actually solving problems at an analytical level versus, just memorizing concepts. And I think that is where we believe technology has a very important role to play. If you, whether a student is learning online or offline, if you actually start tracing a student's learning journey, there is a journey that happens inside the classroom. There's a big part of the journey that happens outside the classroom. Outside the classroom, the student is practicing, revising, assessing, right? This is where we believe that we can come in with a very personalized learning approach, which actually enables students to work on their weak points, right? Versus just going through a one-size-fits-all approach. You can actually start seeing that a student is weak in a certain area. You supplement that area in a big way. And I think to me, like, this is where generative AI or even experiential learning using, say, an augmented reality or a virtual reality setup, I think this is the experience that we as platforms or institutes that are solving for test prep, I think that is where I see the differentiation that can come through our side.
So let me switch gears a little bit. And in many of your comments, you all talked about this need to think about, the rural population and how do we think about reaching all Indians and all students. And, globally right now, we're at an interesting time where depending on the country that you're talking about, there's a lot of backlash against assessments. And one of the common narratives is that as a result of having assessments, as a result of having these test prep industries, the gap between the folks who have access to these resources versus the folks who do not have access to the resources is growing. And so, one question that I have for all of you is, how do we think about reaching the rural students in India? How are you all thinking about kind of expanding what you all are doing as an institution, but also even if you have ideas that you think are more policy level ideas, would love to hear those as well. And maybe Sushma, you had alluded to some of these things. Would love to start with you in terms of what do you think can be done?
So right now, we have experienced a huge digital divide, right? Even during COVID, when our students were away in their small towns or villages, the access to education, whatever we're providing online, is less. So, the minute we try to figure out solutions for that digital divide, things will become much easier. Believe me, thousands of students in rural India who are eager to learn, they have the hunger to do well. But unfortunately, they don't have the devices to do so. Even if the best case scenario, they'll have a smartphone, how much do you learn on smartphone? And how long do you spend reading on a smartphone? And how effective is that? So to answer an advanced paper or a mains paper or a NEET paper on a smartphone for 3 hours, it is draining on a child, right? So the digital divide in terms of connectivity as well as devices, unless we find a solution and give them low bandwidth options and multiple choices for that, whatever content we make, it's not going to help. Because finally, the end consumer is the student. Unless they access it and they learn, nothing good will ever come out of it. So finally, the learner has to learn and deliver and produce outcomes. And that is the goal, and that should be the goal of any educational organization, even if it's edtech. Education is more important than technology. There is no point in providing technology when a student cannot access and learn and educate themselves and bring improvement in their performance, especially in this age and for test prep especially. Because they have to go on improving week on week to gain that confidence, either it's NEET or any other test prep for that matter, right? So that is the starting point. And it's coming to the second point, there is a language divide. India has a huge population of students who study in their local languages. And I think generative AI can solve that problem. Even if we don't, you won't believe me, but to find teachers who can teach only in a Telugu or a Tamil or a Kannada and not use a lot of English in the process, it's very difficult today. And to prepare content in local languages, teachers find it more challenging than in English. So generative AI will definitely help in that process to bridge that language gap, but the digital divide has to be addressed as soon as possible to give equal opportunities to students. Today, content is like everywhere, right? There is no shortage of content. Every teacher has access to so much content that they can read in their lifetime, and same with the students. But how to guide them with proper boundaries and how to guide them with a proper curriculum where they use their time effectively. And there, I think generative AI will be helpful in maintaining the discipline and boundaries of the student and alerting them, saying this is not required for your exam. So if you read it out of curiosity, but this will not help your exam, right? And AI-powered mentors, I think that is the need of the day. I'm not worried about content. I'm not worried about assessments because they are available every single place now and in thousands. What we need to worry about, how to develop AI-powered mentors that can guide students in this sensitive age, through learning, through discipline, through mentoring, and also be an emotional support to the child every single minute.
Makes a lot of sense. We've been seeing that in many places where it's not just the content part, it's the how can you help a student be encouraged to try again, to try a different thing, to be this mentor or coach idea. Abha, anything that you would add to that? Any innovations that you all are experimenting with either now or that you're thinking about for the future?
Yeah, so I think many thoughts to share here, right? One, I think in my mind, technology is going to be the main answer to actually bridge this divide. The divide exists today, but the only way to be able to take these experiences at scale the only way you can do it is really through technology, right? So now if you start sort of looking at what technology can do today, let's talk about Gen AI. Sushma touched on this as well, that actually there's no dearth of content. In fact, the problem is that there's so much content that a student often just gets lost. This is where we think that Gen AI-based solution can actually really, even if a student is not in a structured program, Gen AI can actually help direct a student on the meaningful content to go after. I touched on the personalization, right? This is when you, at the core of your engine, you are driving a personalized learning experience. You can actually start to throw the right kind of content to student. Second thing I would say is, when you look at assessments, even assessments today what you see largely, you will see that I scored X many marks, right? That using Gen AI can move from this is what you scored to what are the mistakes you're doing and why, and how can you sort of double click on that? What are your weak points and how can you strengthen that? The third thing I see where Gen AI will play a very, very important role is how can we truly, in an ideal state, if you think about an ideal state of learning, right? It's a one-on-one experience with a teacher or a mentor. And today, actually, with technology and with data, we actually think we are closer to that, to that sort of vision. And when you can achieve this, then you're starting to get to a place where you can really start to break down that divide, because the ultimate nirvana here is you actually don't need a structured teacher who is driving all of this, but technology can actually guide you through this whole process, the right content, the right assessment, actually hand-holding you, through the journey, not throwing out answers, but actually telling you what is the right next path and guiding you through that journey. So really, in my mind, the ideal state is you actually start to have the one sort of guru and mentor on a one-on-one basis. And when you can get to that state, you sort of really can actually scale this out you can do this at scale, right? Where you start to get to one-on-one teaching. I'll also give an example, right? We actually recently acquired Doubtnut, but if you look at Doubtnut, it is actually solving for doubt solving at scale. And again, that's technology at the heart of it. If you talk to most students in test prep, doubts is one of their biggest challenges. And with technology today, a student can actually get an instant solution to their doubts, which if you start thinking about doing this at scale with a physical teacher, it's not both economically and operationally not viable. And now if you sort of start to layer on Gen AI, you can start to see a solution where you're not just throwing out a solution, but you are actually guiding the solution on how to arrive at an answer. And to me, like, these are the solutions these are the solutions that will ultimately take you to the place where everyone starts to have access, and you don't really need, a very structured classroom batch classes the way things are run today. So that's, like, to me, the answer is really technology taking us to close that divide.
That's fascinating. I need to learn more about what you're sharing on the doubt side. I have a general rule not to get into AI when I'm sitting next to an IIT professor. And so, Amey, let me go to you on, how do you think about this? Are we getting closer to some of the technological solutions that were just proposed? How can we really reach, these rural populations?
So I think my answer will kind of complement what Sushma and Abha has already said. So one of the challenges is how do we get this rural population who are not very conversant with English or not even confident in English. So I will tell you, I looked at JEE and NEET statistics. I think not every year statistics are released. So I think it is JEE 21 and NEET 2020. These exams are now conducted in 13 languages. So English, Hindi, and 11 regional languages. Many people don't even know that. Okay, so nearly all major Indian languages are covered. But what is the number of students who write this exam percentage? So for NEET, 79% write in English, 14% in Hindi, and 7% in all other languages, which is much better than JEE, where 94% write in English, 3% in Hindi, and 3% in other 11 languages. So what I feel is this, our final goal should be, yes, to make sure that we are reaching everyone. Everyone should, probably there should be a quite even distribution of these different Indian languages. But initially, can we help them just to get this knowledge? Many people in villages do not even know that such exams exist. Okay, so we have to reach them, and then we have to give them confidence that yes, there is a material and there is a will that regional language students or Indian language students, other languages, they should also excel, they should also reach. There are other challenges. If such students reach IIT, then we face some problems. Sometimes some students are not very comfortable in English, but those challenges I won't talk about right now. So the very first challenge is making sure that the number of students who are opting for these exams in regional Indian languages increase. Okay, and our government is doing some effort. You might have heard about, there are these systems. One is called Anuvadini and another called Bhashini, which are useful to convert documents or videos or text into from one language into another. So again, these are work in progress, but they are using Gen AI to get these translations, as others are also saying, that we will need not just experts, but also technology, because otherwise scaling is not possible. Okay. Other thing which was mentioned is that even finding someone who can teach at JEE level, even mains level in regional language is difficult. Okay, because they will use English terms, but I feel that is okay. Even in classrooms, when someone is teaching Hindi, they use technical terms in English. Sometimes there are no reasonable terms in other languages. Okay, I think that's fine. In fact, we are not writing literature here, so having English terms, commonly used English terms is fine. But at the same time, they should be taught as like in a classroom. So even the video lectures or notes, they should be as if some teacher is teaching it, not some machine is trying to do it. Currently, if we use Gen AI to translate these or dub these videos, it comes out very, very mechanical, very, very computer-like. Okay. So, so we are also putting some effort. So I am currently looking after a project called Sathi, where we are trying to create regional language content. It has just started few months back, so currently we are not having much data to show, but I am hoping that at least we will be able to increase the number of participants from villages and other rural places. Okay. So I would say that getting students to write the exams first is the first step, and then making sure that they get content. And one more challenging thing which Sushma talked about is these devices. Even if we make sure that everything is available, so now actually, in fact, yesterday Sathi has started 7 channels which will be run on DTH. But TV or mobile, generally in rural places, either they are not very accessible, or even if they are shared among family members. So preparing for 3-4 hours a day is not possible. Okay, so we have to find out ways, maybe send them some text material, printed material, and other thing could be using what is called this buddy system. So from computer science and software engineering, there is a concept called pair programming, where 2 people program together. That way they can find out each other's mistakes. Okay, now I think we have to extend that concept to other places, other subjects also. This pair could be a human, some classmate, or it could be technology, it could be a chatbot. Now this chatbot can monitor the progress, how student is learning step by step, and then can give feedback, try to guide the person to the right path, rather than just saying yes or no, yes, you are right or wrong. So I feel there is a need for a government push, which is happening slowly, and increasing technology. And we have to start step by step, not just give up, because the path is very complex and it will take some time.
Fascinating. We're running out of time, so I want to switch to a rapid fire round. And all of you work with so many kids and so many students, and ultimately what you all are trying to do is help this next generation be successful and have prosperous lives. And so as we think about the future of work and how much is changing, in your minds, and we'll go quickly to each of you, what do you think are the most important skills that we need to be teaching the next generation of Indians to really be successful over the next few decades? And let me start, Abha, and we can just go this way.
Rapid fire style? Yeah.
Rapid fire.
Okay, so I think our test prep today actually does, like I shared earlier, right? I think we do a very good job with the on the analytical side, right? When I take an exam like JEE or NEET, I think sometimes I feel like where we need to do more, and I'm coming more from the actual sort of how the exams are structured, more around the social aspects of a real world. I think our exams are not addressing that need. I mean, the institutes, I hope once people get selected are looking into that, but that is a gap that I see today, and I think that's an important gap to fill because it starts to trickle down the entire value chain.
How about you, Sushma?
I feel there is a huge need for interactive, active learning. That active learning is somehow getting slower and slower as we go on. And we see lethargy in certain percentage of children, because we need tools, and maybe technology can also make a play there along with the human intervention that happens in a classroom, especially if a student is willing to learn more online. We need tools which will facilitate that interactive learning. At Infinity Learn, we have developed a tool called Vista, which is virtual intelligence system. What it does is, along with what Abha had mentioned, we have the doubts clarification with scaffolding, where a student has to go through the process to arrive. Similarly, we have mentoring, through AI to understand the student mindset and tailor-make the curriculum, thought process, and psychological mentoring also through that. And that process can remind the student to take that break and do some activity, or try to teach interactively or solve a problem interactively. The more interaction that can be included in the academic curriculum today will help the child be more active, more outspoken. I think a lot of Indian kids are not as outspoken, right? There's a huge percentage, especially in rural India. So we have to facilitate and encourage that a lot.
Okay, I think we're getting the time's up signal. So social and interactive. Thank you all. And sorry, Amey, I didn't get you for the last word.
So I just wanted to say one word, refute, that there is so much content, people can generate content. They should be able to analytically, logically reason about it, whether it is correct or not, because there is a lot of wrong content also. So they should be able to have that skill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. An incredible conversation. Round of applause for the panelists. Thank you so much, Saurabh. We really appreciate it.